You're probably wondering, what does an Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois video have anything to do with a basketball court, what seems to be a soccer field, or a football field as they call it in England, and also a field that is used for cricket, which, by the way, I think is really interesting in and of itself, and I'm going to tell you why. What it emphasizes is British sporting excellence within the influence of America, right? Because obviously soccer, or football as you know it to be, is probably not the biggest sport in America, right? And there's a good reason for that. The reason is because here in America, there's just too many sports going on. There's the NFL, there's the NBA, and then if you're niche into hockey, there's the NHL. So there's too many sports to pay attention to. And then on top of that, you got MMA to contend with versus boxing, and all of those two sort of merging together. In comes Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, in which they now have the record at Wembley Stadium, which, by the way, is nothing more than a soccer field, 96,000 people that are going to be in attendance. So that puts in perspective exactly what they are interested in, which is what? AJ, for one, being that he is such a very marketable person, sort of embodies everything that is about British excellence, right? In the way that at least he presents himself in the media. Because just like what I've mentioned to Zain Musa Boxing Dosage when I did a podcast and a few episodes with him, I've told him that Anthony Joshua reminds me of an American athlete. Why? Because of the way that he presents himself, the way that he comes across as very politically correct. And not only that, you've seen instances where he confronted a few college kids that were heckling him from a balcony, only for him to come up in that same room that those kids were in to confront them and say the following: I'm not what you think I am when it comes to all this media hype. And I know exactly what he means by that. Anthony Joshua is trying to convey to you that, you know what? I may come across as a guy who is media friendly, media trained to be exact. And this is the reason why I compared Anthony Joshua to an American athlete, somebody who's like an NBA player, somebody who's an NFL player. These guys know how to never step over the line. And if you talk to a lot of these professional athletes, many of them really view the world from a friendly, commercialistic point of view. Okay, meaning that they are not hyper skeptical or hyper paranoid in the way that you would, let's say, see the underground MMA community and those fans in the chats and comment section and things of that nature. So you know what I mean. You know exactly what I'm trying to convey in this, right? Anthony Joshua knows how to polish himself when he needs to, but he also knows how to hide it, especially when a part of it wants to come out of him, right? So he knows how to hide it. Media trained, like these NBA players. A lot of these guys, bro, let me tell you, they come from some of the most thuggish backgrounds you could even imagine. A lot of you don't even know that Paul Pierce is a blood member from LA. A lot of you don't even know that a lot of these guys come from very similar neighborhoods. But when you see them in front of the camera, in front of these fans, and by the way, to be honest with you, put in perspective, how much does it cost to buy a ticket when it comes to, let's say, a particular sporting event? NBA, Premier League soccer, all these types of sporting events, let me tell you, man, they are extremely expensive. So what does that mean? That means that you have a black majority of players, but they have a white audience. And so that means they expect something out of them. They expect friendliness. They expect the positive black dude that sort of is in this line with the mainstream way of thinking. Anthony Joshua plays that role very well. On top of the fact that he has the cosmetics to play it off, right? A very marketable looking individual at that. Anthony Joshua is really no different than any of these athletes that I had just mentioned. Which means that for him to get 96,000 people to show up at Wembley Stadium, keep in mind, he's also lost to Usyk twice. I think that plays some kind of factor in terms of marketability. But then you look at Usyk now, people come to their senses, or sometimes they don't even care at all. And the proof of that is somebody like Conor McGregor, who can lose multiple times and still people will be interested, like he's still a double champion of the world, because he exceeds more than just the aspect of title. What Conor McGregor and somebody like Anthony Joshua, especially in this particular topic at hand, what they garner around the world is what you would call generational influence. You want proof of this? You ever seen that MMA video of these two amateur 7 or 8-year-old looking British kids that were fighting an amateur fight in England, right? The one kid did the little Leon Edwards gunshot sign, and then the other one did the Conor McGregor strut. You know, that little walk that he does, okay? Who influenced that? Conor McGregor. Even Leon Edwards, after he got that knockout from Kamaru Usman in his first title win, what did he do? He did exactly that walk that Conor McGregor does, the billionaire strut. That is generational influence. That is who Anthony Joshua is, and that is who Conor McGregor is. Which means that their losses really don't matter. But in this particular instance, Anthony Joshua, his losses actually really do matter, considering the context that Usyk is the best guy in the world. He's the best boxer, and he lost to him. But how did Anthony Joshua do with everybody else? Look at what he did with Helenius. Look at what he did with Francis Ngannou. He did that so easily. Nobody, not even in the UFC, has done that to Francis Ngannou. Granted, the circumstances that it's a boxing match and not in the world of Francis Ngannou, still impressive nonetheless. Okay? And that is the reason why you got 96,000 people showing up at a soccer field to go see this guy fight. Now, if I haven't really mentioned much about this soccer field earlier, let me give you guys a little bit of some context. So this right here is where they have a semi-pro team play, right? Obviously, that's just as big as soccer gets at the semi-pro level in the United States, but this is where they play. And then on top of that, they have, I believe, cricket clubs that play out here, mostly Pakistani Indian dudes, maybe even 1 or 2 British guys that are expats living over here playing with them. But nonetheless, again, the generational influence of British sports excellence in terms of the fact that you see Conor McGregor's influence towards everybody else in the MMA space, including those that are in the youth, the influence of Anthony Joshua in the way that he can influence the younger generation of British fighters to the next level of marketability. Because remember, Ricky Hatton never had this type of notoriety. Not in a way where, let's say it was how do I say this, very commercialized. You're talking about Under Armour, you're talking about other sponsorships all across the UK. I don't know what else he's sponsored by other than Under Armour, but Hugo Boss, there you go. Constantly in GQ magazines and things of that nature. This is Anthony Joshua in a nutshell. This is Idris Elba level of influence. And who is Idris Elba, man? Just probably one of the biggest British actors of all time. Plays a few American roles and this and that, but really is known as the black British guy in most movies. And by the way, is sort of in line to play the next James Bond. I don't know how they're going to go about with the multiculturalism world of equal opportunity that they're trying to play out today. But either effect, the one thing you got to understand is that this is what this fight symbolizes, is generational influence. But not only that, I think also a storyline that we're highly underestimating. Let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Because there's a lot of underestimated storylines that are not being presented here. For one, we're not even talking about Daniel Dubois, right? We're supposed to be doing a fight preview for Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. That's it. That's who we are making this video for. But for whatever reason, we're not bringing up Daniel Dubois. And I think that we should. And here's what I'm going to bring up in terms of Daniel Dubois and his reality. He didn't have the privileges Anthony Joshua had, and this is not to say in any degree as to proclaim that Anthony Joshua had some sort of privileged silver spoon life in the way that Eddie Hearn did. No, not at all. How his career was cultivated, I would argue, has a lot of privileges behind it. He won the Olympics, and as a result of that, he already garnered national attention. And from national attention, he goes on to the pros, wins the British title, then the Intercontinental, International titles, and then moving on to the world titles with Brazil, Molina, and a whole bunch of other names that are in the heavyweight division, including Klitschko. He moves on to that stretch of things, right? So you could argue that he was able to develop his skills based on the fact that he was, how do I say this, matched up correctly. And a lot of people will say things like cherry picking or this and that. And by the way, the argument of the Saudis sort of coming in the boxing game right now is the argument of saying, well, you know what, maybe perhaps they're going to destroy the careers of prospects too early. And if that's the case, man, you know what? You really don't know. You really don't know if that is a reality that you can hold as any merit to it. Because at the same time, right, you got to see it from two perspectives. Either you want to see it from the perspective of being a fan, or see it from the perspective of, let's say, being the person that is actually behind the wheel, i.e. the POV of the fighter. Now, if you're looking at the POV, the personal own point of view of the fighter, they're going to look at what is the best measurable risk they can take that is manageable, but also sufficient in its rewards. So in other words, low risk, high reward. That is the ultimate goal for most fighters, okay? So if you build up their career that way, there's an argument that you could build up their skills in that same similar effect, which is why boxers have used the prospect to champion, journeyman, fight-taking trajectory all throughout the years, right? So there's a system there that works. Khabib has sort of used that same method in his mixed martial arts career. And look, we are arguing that whether he is the greatest of all time or not. And guess what? I've talked about that in my previous live stream, where I go into details as to why he is the greatest of all time or not. But here, I'm going to tell you how he got there. And how he got there was very methodical matchmaking, okay? So if you take that away, you're taking away privileges of fighters that have privileges, such as the backing of Eddie Hearn. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that Anthony Joshua had privileges through his promotion, and he used it to catapult his career. Now, enough about Anthony Joshua, because we're really not giving Daniel Dubois any shine. Daniel Dubois is the opposite, just like Frank Warren. Most of the guys that Frank Warren has in his stable are non-Olympic guys, guys that came off the streets, or guys that nobody wanted to give a chance. Hamza Shiraz is a prime example of that. You see, Hamza Shiraz was a guy that nobody wanted to give a chance. And now look at him, captain of the team, and beat the so-called Olympic stable of Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing in a 5 versus 5. Now, again, I don't want to be inaccurate, but I think the accuracy of the fight and the pedigree of these men are important to point out. So I don't know if they were actually Olympic level guys or not. Deontay Wilder certainly was, but you can also argue that Zhang is as well. But the story remains the same. They have privileges that these fighters don't. Daniel Dubois didn't have that privilege. Look, do you think that Anthony Joshua early on in his career would have taken on a tough matchup in Joe Joyce like that? I personally don't think so. I don't think that it would have been that soon. But they did. They decided, hey, you know what? This is a good matchup to do right now because there's not really a lot of heavyweights. And as a result of not having a lot of heavyweights, hey, let's just match these two guys up. They are in our stable, and we're going to make a whole lot of cash out of it. And that, indeed, that is exactly what they did. So they did the Joyce and the Dubois fight. And as a result of that, what happened? You had to knock one guy off, take his O, and that had to be Dubois. But even with Joyce getting the better of those exchanges, here comes Dubois with a better career now. And guess what? Joe Joyce was an Olympian. He was an Olympic boxer as well, like Anthony Joshua. So keep that in mind, right? This is a battle of privileged boxers and boxers that had to come up the hard way through the pros. So I'm going to end this in the 20-minute mark, and I'm going to say in the last 2 minutes what is the pros and cons for both. With the amateur system, you learn a lot. You get a lot of experience, and I think that you would jump up very quickly if the experience was vast in the way that Lomachenko was with 400 some odd fights, and then going into the pros with only his second fight being a title fight. Those are rare occasions, but they are not something that can't happen again, right? Just with the right amount of experience like that, the right amount of pedigree, they can catapult guys very quickly if they wish, but with a vast amateur career. So some argue that that's the best way. Some argue that going pro is the best way. Look at Jake Paul as an example of that. He never went through the amateur routes or anything like that. But he's learning through the ropes as a pro, even though he's saying that he's trying to go into the 2028 Olympics. But you look at the 2024 Olympic gold medal champion this year. He's a Uzbekistani boxer. By the way, I can't pronounce his name. You got to look him up. Gold medal winner of 2024 super heavyweight, right? 6'7", Uzbekistani boxer. He is a 14-0 undefeated prospect. Now, a lot of the names that you look at in his record, you don't really know them. They don't even have a Wikipedia. The majority of these names, they are on Wikipedia, but they don't have a link to their name. So put that in perspective. He won the Olympics. This guy won the Olympics. So, not to get on the tangent of that Olympic champion, but again, just begs the question, which style is better? Going pro, just putting your hand out there and trying your luck with the best guys in the world, and if you either sink or you swim and that's it, or you go the safe route and learn as you go and get better as you're learning, because that was the traditional route. That is the battle that we are seeing between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois. And even with the 2 losses against Usyk was kind enough to let the IBF belt go in order for these two guys to fight for some kind of prize. You know what I think about that? I think that there may have been people that paid behind the scenes to say, hey, you know what? Listen, drop this belt. We'll give you some cash. And in the meantime, it will promote the fight, make it even bigger because there's a title on the line. And I think about it, I'm like, why not? Usyk is about 39 years old right now. You never know when he's going to retire. The only person that loses out on this whole ordeal is Tyson Fury. Because even if he wins against Usyk, unfortunately, he can never, ever call himself the official undisputed. He can claim some sort of a fact that he's held all the belts, and he already has. But to actually have the title of undisputed, he never will. With Anthony Joshua, he is at the popularity level right now where he doesn't need an undisputed championship belt. All he needs is just a little bit of a boost. And this is a big boost having the IBF belt on the line. As I've told you on the video and the description section, watch until the end. Like and subscribe, because here's my official prediction right now. Anthony Joshua knockout mid-round, 5 to 7 rounds. Let's get it.